how's it going? Started to harvest the bathtub worm farm the other day, and I thought I'd just give you a bit of an update on it while I'm finishing it off. Just for those who don't know how we run it, it's basically a bathtub with some drainage gravel in the bottom and some weed mat to separate that from the bedding. And what we do is add in a whole heap of shredded horse manure, and that adds as the base bedding. We feed up one end a bit of a vegetable slushy that we just make up with scraps from the kitchen and around the yard, just pulverise it in a food processor. Just makes it easy for the worms to process it and the bacteria to process it. And we just feed that up one end. Down the other end, we end up taking the castings out of there once they've been processed by the worms, replace the horse manure, and start feeding the slushy down that end. The worms migrate from the old feeding side to the new feeding side. We then wait about a month or so, take out the old feeding end, and we can use those worms and those castings out in the veggie patch, either as added directly underneath plants, on top of beds, or making up worm casting tea. So that's just a bit of a rough idea about how the bed works. So this is where I got up to. I've pretty much all taken it back nearly, probably about 2/3 of the castings have actually come out. There's still loads of worms in here, as you can see, just below the surface. Still loads in there, so there's a nice healthy population. A lot of the ones that I've taken out of the castings as I was harvesting it have gone into this bucket here. The reason I harvested these guys is because I've got a rather large compost pile I'm making up at the moment, just with tree trimmings and bits and pieces. So what I want to do is use these worms here. There's not a great deal, but there should be enough to start off a further composting cycle within that compost, waiting for it to cool down below 30 degrees centigrade, and then I'll pop these guys in and they can chew their way through it as well. Just got two different lots of the castings from the bed here. The lot on the right came from the end that had been laying dormant for a while, and this lot here on the left came from the end that was still being fed the scraps. I don't know if you can make it out down in there, but there's still quite a bit of fibrous material, bits of horse manure and the like. Down in this end here though, it's a lot finer grade. There is still some of the fibre from the manure, but nowhere near as much. I think the worms being left down here a little bit too long have actually done a really good job of breaking this stuff down. So I'll just give you a bit of a look at how the matting underneath is going, separating the castings from the drainage system. So all I've got here is just a weed mat, and that's just there to stop the bedding and the other bits and pieces from going down into this drainage area. The drainage area is basically just 20mm or 3/4 inch rock. Around the outside you can see when the worms have come down and brought castings with them. I don't think there's a great deal of worms down in here. I have seen a fair amount of oh, there's one little worm down in there. I don't know if you can see him squirming around. Try not to crush him. I have seen a fair few black soldier fly larvae cocoons. Actually, there's a couple down in there, and I'd say what happens is they have a good feed on the worm food, and then they come down here to pupate and turn into the flies. It's quite a good little system. I found that the drainage pipe or hole, which is just down here, hasn't clogged up at all. Squashed the black soldier fly larvae. It's just down in there. Pull these aside, full of springtails, and it's the shade cloth is just over the top of that, so it's still draining freely. We still get a bit of moisture down in the bucket there, so it's not too wet and it's not too dry. Yeah, next step I suppose is really easy. All it's a matter of doing is adding in the new horse manure. So this manure has been sitting outside now for a couple of weeks, close to a month actually, and on the farm before it's collected by the chaps who bag it up and sell it, it sits in a pile for about another 4 weeks. So I've run over it with the lawnmower. Don't know how well that's coming up, but it's nice and fine. It's exactly what the worms are after. There's loads of bacteria in there, there's organic matter in there. What's going to happen is the worms from down this end of the farm are now going to slowly migrate up here. I've got a worm slushy I'm going to add, a veggie slushy. Got some stuff upstairs I'm going to add down this side here, and also some shredded bills. I went through and shredded 6 months worth of bills. I'm going to soak those guys and they'll go on top here as well. And yeah, that's pretty much all it. Then she'll be up and running again. I almost forgot, I'm going to add some biochar into this lot as well. All I'm going to do is sprinkle probably about a litres worth on top here, maybe a little bit more. Biochar will be good for locking away nutrients. They won't tend to get washed away, they'll get locked up in the little pores within the biochar itself. And when I come to add more horse manure, when we top it up, I'll add a little bit more biochar in there as well. It tends to be a little bit alkaline, so I don't want to add too much at once, so that could upset the worms a bit. So that's it, pretty much all done. I'll come back tomorrow and add the soaked shredded bills and also the worm slushy, or sorry, veggie slushy in here, and that'll keep them going. Just to give you a quick look, this food's been in here for 2 days now, and as you can see we've got springtail activity, and we've also got the compost worms have moved up here, so they're slowly making their way up the other end here. I got some wet newspaper, it's wet bills actually, and garden catalogues, seed catalogues. So as you can see, the whitetails are under there, and there's a compost worm there as well. The biochars, the little black bits, that should help raise the pH if there's any concerns, but they're slowly moving their way up here. So yeah, there goes another one, just quickly zooming off down there. So yeah, I'm rather happy. I think the worms are happy, and as soon as this food's pretty much all gone, I'd say by tomorrow night I'll just come down and add another veggie slushy to it. So there you go. So this barrel under the Tahitian lime here is one of our worm barrels that we use to feed the gardens. Basically what happens is rainwater and other water comes through there, washes through the castings, feeds the grounds, and you end up with lime trees that just don't stop fruiting and putting out the flowers. This thing's been absolutely spectacular since we've had the worm farms underneath. So what I'm going to be doing, just quickly I'll run through it with you, I'm going to be splitting the castings that are full of worms in half. Half will be going into this barrel, and this barrel is going up the far end of this bed underneath the kaffir lime tree. Directly on top of the castings I'll be putting some of this broken up horse manure that I've just given it a bit of a quick hose just to moisten it up, and also some of the alfalfa or lucerne hay from the hay bale beds we had out the front yard. This one started to fall to pieces, so I thought I might as well break him up, give him a bit of a soak, and that'll go on top of the horse manure layer. So just to give you a look at the worms in this barrel, I've just got some kangkong that I pruned off the aquaponics and put in here. Down the bottom here we've got some lovely castings. I'll just take a top scraping off. There we go, beautiful castings, little red worm there. A bit sunny and glary, sorry about that, but beautiful looking castings. Springtails are in there as well, another worm. So it is great looking stuff in here. This was just started off with horse manure and some other garden scraps thrown on top afterwards. Have another dig in another area, more worms, so it's just nice and light and fluffy. So now all I'm going to do is just fork these guys out and into the other barrel. I don't want to use the shovel because I don't want to cut any in half, and that there should be enough to start off the next load of worms. Now it's just a matter of throwing in some of that horse manure on top for them. So I think 2 shovel loads will do it. It is very wet, it won't drown the worms though, because there are holes all through the bottom of this barrel. And next comes the lucerne. There we go. That's pretty much all it. It's as easy as that. Just to finish it off, I'll put some of the old scraps back over the top there. Actually, I'll put them all on, hey? And then just some shade cloth just to keep the direct sunlight off of it. So that's pretty much all it. So I'll get the other barrel in situation, and then I'll show you what it looks like set up as well. And there you go, there's the other one set up next to the lemongrass barrel. We've got sacred basil to one side and a kaffir lime tree in front of it. So again, the idea is the water's going to flow through that and then into the ground and be taken up by the kaffir lime tree. I think the kaffir really enjoyed the little compost pile that was here last season, and I'll be building another one here soon. So there you go, there's a bit of a 2 for 1. How we feed up the bathtub farm, and also how we split these little barrels down the back here. Also really interested to see how the worms go in that large compost heap. I reckon they should do pretty well. From what last year's compost, the amount of regulars in there, it was pretty astounding, and it was great looking compost, like I've probably said before. So the little DIY barrels, I mean, they're so easy to make. You only need a saw and a hand drill and away you go. Some worms and some sort of bedding or manure helps, but yeah, they're really easy to make, and the dual purpose they serve, not only castings and worms but also feeding the trees and the plants around them. Fantastic. So we've got a couple of other composting worm clips there as well, so check them out. Not only how to make the farms and the feed, but also how to use the castings to make up a bit of a tea. Really basic stuff and really easy to do. I'll stop jabbering on and I'll leave it there. If you do have any comments, questions or suggestions, just pop them in the comments section below and I'll get back to you. Other than that, I'm going upstairs for a nice cold drink. Catch ya!